His particular story he's relating in this book has to do with amalgamated copper, because that's where he has his personal involvement. But he knows. I mean, he knows the Rockefellers. He actually, if you look at that book, it'll say on a particular page how they meet at 11 a.m. on Tuesday or whatever the day is, and they literally make and break empires. That's his word. Make and break empires on, a particular day of the week. Let's get together and make and break an empire. And so he said that's what they did. And he said this religion, if you cross them, there's no place on earth. He said, no place on earth you could go to hide from these guys. And he says the Rockefeller Standard Oil agents, this is 1904. 1904 are in every hamlet. That's the term. Not every big city, not every city, every hamlet. Every little hamlet in the land has a Rockefeller agent watching. They're watching. Who are they watching? They're watching especially younger people who are up-and-comers, going to be city council members and so on, and they get them at that young age, and they do nice things for them. Hey, you sound like a great guy. Want a little help here? Want some money for your campaign? I'll contact my buddy at the newspaper, and he'll, promote you and all that sort of stuff. And, of course, the young up-and-coming politician, hey, sounds great to me. It's almost, like a sort of quasi-Mephistopheles. I'm putting that delicately because I don't want to get, in trouble legally. But the idea is you're bought. You're basically bought by these people. So later on, you pretty much do what they want because you're beholden to them. They have a visit to you. Say, do you remember back when you were 21 and starting your political career and running for city council? And the person who's now, maybe running for the U.S. Senate said, yes, I remember, Mr. Rockefeller. And you know how the story goes. So anyway, all right. So at that time, their agents are in every hamlet in the land. And what they're doing in a political economic sense is they're trying to execute the power elite strategy, which, as I'm explaining in this part one of my series here, the power elite's historical outline, is using a dialectical process. I mentioned last time about William Whitney in the late 1800s. Skull and Bones saying will contribute heavily. It's not just Rockefeller, it's the Whitneys and so on and so on, to both political parties, and it will alternate power, so the stupid public thinks it has a choice, when it really doesn't. And so the idea in this dialectical process is that these Americans, these young, independent, let's go out west in the cowboys, all this sort of stuff, independent guys, they're not going to go for this communism stuff that Marx is trying to ram down people's throat with bloody revolutions. Maybe in Europe we can get away with it, not in America. So they say, now how are we going to finagle those pesky Americans into giving up their free enterprise, capitalism, and values and so on? So what they do is they use the dialectical process to do that. So the free enterprise capitalism of this young independent republic is the thesis. They created Marx, Karl Marx, the antithesis. Now, remember, Karl Marx wasn't the first one. There were communes in this country, in New Harmony, Indiana, way before Karl Marx. But communism, even before Marx, was being developed as an antithesis to capitalism, so that the synthesis, which Americans would buy into eventually, not immediately, but down the road, would be socialism, and they could have a world socialist government. And therefore, way back in 1911, after the Rockefellers, had every agent in every hamlet in the land, there's a cartoon, and I put it in my books, The Secret Records Revealed. I put it also in The Globalist, and it's a cartoon by a communist of the day. Now remember, the Russian Revolution, Lenin and so on, and Trotsky isn't until 1917. But there are communists before that. Jack London, the famous author, was very, very sympathetic in the late 1800s to communists. I have a New York Times column from the late 1800s where he's addressing a group, a communist rally. So they're there. It's not just the Russian Revolution. Oh, look, here's Lenin. This is the first communist. No. They existed way before that. So anyway, in 1911. Robert Minor is one of these guys as well. He's a communist-leaning kind of guy, and he's in on it. I mean, he has a whole history, and I've written this up in some of my News with Views columns about Robert Minor in my books and what he was really all about. He has a fascinating story. He's not just some guy sitting in St. Louis, in the corner of an editorial department scratching out some cartoons. So anyway. and he's hooked up with that whole Russian, where Lenin came from and so on. So anyway, he creates this cartoon, 1911, in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Now remember, St. Louis Post-Dispatch is the Pulitzer Publishing Company. The annual Pulitzer Award, that's where it came from originally. St. Louis Post-Dispatch is the Pulitzer Publishing Company. And so he has this cartoon, 1911. It's all the power elite guys in this country, Rockefeller, Morgan, Carnegie, Perkins, so on, standing there at the corner of Wall Street. And they're greeting Karl Marx, and they're saying, delighted. Little Karl Marx is standing there, and under Marx's arm is a book. Now remember, the cartoonist doesn't have to put the book, right? They could just have the Rockefeller, Morgan, these guys saying, delighted, little Karl Marx, and everybody chuckles, right? Ha ha, nice cartoon. But he puts that book under the arm for a reason, and it's a sign. It's a signal. It's a signal. Why? Because Robert Minor wants you, the viewer, in 1911, to know what this is about. And under Marx's arm, this book is not titled Communism. Not Communism. It's titled Socialism, because Minor knows that's what the synthesis is going to be. And that's what the power elite, Rockefeller, Carnegie, these guys are welcoming. They're saying, delighted with this socialism.
And of course, I think people have to understand, socialism is a sincere, benevolent, idealistic theory, but it doesn't work without force. Somebody's got to be in charge, and that's why people of great wealth push socialism. People think, oh, my goodness, socialism is going to disseminate their wealth and distribute their wealth. No, ladies and gentlemen. Socialism is going to distribute your wealth. Because basically it is the people of great wealth who are pushing socialism. Why do you think you see all these very wealthy people backing the Democrats? Because they want to centralize all power with government. Why? Why then, of course, the politicians will have the power to do whatever they want to, and the people of great wealth will buy and sell the politicians. This is how the system really works, and there's not one person in 1,000 who really understands that this is done specifically and intentionally to increase the power of the very wealthy who are being attacked by the socialists. Go ahead.
Yeah, and what I try to do is give a parallel history to what you're taught, because what you're being taught is just junk. It's not real. It's sort of like Dr. Stan saying illusion and delusion and so on. Because socialism was the synthesis, because as I said, Marx had this idea of bloody revolutions, and that didn't go over too big, right? So the year after his death in England, you had the Fabian Society, which is more sneaky. They said, well, this bloody stuff isn't going over. And so we'll do a sneaky type of approach to socialism. That's what Fabian means. Fabius, the Roman general from a couple of thousand years ago, will be sneaky about it. Slow strategy. Over time, we'll sort of get our way, but not through some bloody immediate action. And so that's what they did. And so the reason for socialism was that would be something, rather than the bloody communist revolution, that the American public could be snookered into going along with down the road. Not immediately, remember, sneaky like, Fabian, slow like. And that's why one of the symbols of the Fabian Society is just the, wolf in sheep's clothing, but the tortoise. See, they have two. Most people think of the wolf in sheep's clothing, and that's true. But they also have the tortoise, the real slow, but he plods along, and he'll get to his goal down the road. And so what you have are these sneaky things going on in this country. For example, if you're John D. Rockefeller and you're getting some bad PR, well, what do? Well, you go out and hand little dimes to little children, right? Oh, here, little Timmy, here's a dime. And there, the press covers it, the big pictures, and it's on the cover of the New York Times. Oh, look at that. Nice Mr. Rockefeller. Giving them dimes to them little children. Isn't he nice? Well, the same sort of thing happens politically. What you would have about this time the next year, 1912, after the cartoon, and after Colonel Edward Mandel House, who was the manager of Woodrow Wilson. He's the agent of the power elite, keeping these guys like Wilson in line, and communicating on a regular basis with the Warburgs or whoever about what was happening with their plan for a Federal Reserve and so on. They had to stick Teddy Roosevelt into the mix here, right? Because Taft is going to win unless they can split the vote there, and so they get Teddy to come back into the race, and that splits that vote, so Wilson gets to win. But see, Teddy Teddy's really important. Everybody's, oh, Rough Rider, good old American Teddy.